Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yay. Okay, let me turn
Yay.
on my camera.
I
I
just
can hear
sent
you
the,
both.
yep, I just sent the link out to everybody in this new way so that, like, I don't know what happened to the,
Okay.
um,
Yeah, I got a dead link and a couple people were messaging me, but looks like we
yeah,
got
no, I
fixed
got
really
that too.
easily.
So just tell them I just sent it out in a new email, or you can
Once.
obviously paste this.
Yay.
All right.
Okay. No, I can't freaking see anything, so glasses are coming on. I need to turn up the volume.
All right. Yeah, people have got it now. I actually clicked on one of the emails and it worked. So I know it
Wow, that's good.
somewhere along it did. Okay. So, Julie, I'm gonna make you, all right, well, we'll see. Welcome, everybody. This is so exciting.
No. Everyone, this is obviously our very first minute of
Yeah.
one of these, so we're trying to iron everything out. Sorry about the dead link earlier.
Um,
I feel like such a boomer. Even though I use Zoom all the time, there's always something that throws me. I don't know when I'll ever get used to it. So, oh my God, Stephanie, Joanna, oh my gosh. Okay, and now it's not letting me see who else is there. Ruth, okay. Oh God, this is the best. No, I can't see anyone else. Oh well.
oh, all right, let me, um, all right. Thank you all so much for showing up. This is very exciting. I'm very nervous. All right, Julie, I'm going to make you co-host to let people in. And Stephanie, I'm going to make you co-host too. We'll give everybody, since I had a link crisis, I'll give everybody a couple minutes before we totally,
Hey.
yeah, thank goodness for the admit all button on
That
Zoom.
was like a
That's new.
really mild Zoom crisis compared to some that I've had. So, I mean, I was going down my negative rabbit hole and thinking, what am I going to talk about today? Oh, yeah, like to interrupt the negative thoughts. Here's like, I was forgetting my own advice. And then it worked out.
All right. Hey, John. So fun to see everybody here.
Thanks, that worked.
I am so grateful. I'm going to give everybody another minute or two. What I'd love for you to do in the
Can y'all hear
chat.
Niblet tearing up my couch back there? Oh my God.
What I would love for you to do in the chat is just maybe put where you're from and what your goal is for today, or like what you would like to see. I did send out a questionnaire yesterday, but I know how good I am at opening a lot of email blasts, so and I have some of the questions from those of you that did respond, which is great, but we really want to craft this as this evolves into being really meaningful for you. So we really want to know what you want to get out of this.
Oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. I'm gonna
Shannon,
read
hey,
all of these and
Shannon.
reply to all of you. This is the best.
So fun. Yeah, this was like, it was such an amazing response from everybody, which was just really special to us to see how much this resonated with the title of it, the topic resonated I think it's really needed. And
oh, someone is saying, can we ask people to mute? It's probably a good idea because
yeah, please mute yourselves. I will do my best to mute everybody as well. All right. And just so like take a minute, I'm gonna like just kind of shake my body and stomp my feet because I just came out of the panic of, oh my gosh, the link isn't working. So, Joanna, we're going to talk today about that you're, if I don't talk about it, ask me at the end. We're going to try and leave some room, some space for questions. That your body is not a scoreboard. Your body is telling a story. I have and maybe I'll start my introductions with kind of what frustrates me about a lot of the trauma-informed care or supposedly trauma-informed care messaging that's out and about in the world. Yep. Okay. Deep breaths.
when you first brought that up to me, Melanie, that our body isn't a scorecard as much as it is holding our stories, that kind of unlocked something for me. It was so hopeful to hear that. And I think that's kind of the basic concept of all of this. Niblets back here. So yeah, I'm excited to keep because I've been thinking so long, my body's keeping the score. Oh, here I'm aware of the way I'm holding this trauma in the way that I am. How do I interrupt it and override it? And that story reframe was huge. So I'm excited.
Well, I promise it's not really helpful to think of your life as a win-lose situation. Like, and nobody's like, I get it. Life can be really hard, but like, it is not a win-lose situation. And you would not, when I teach the neuroscience of storytelling, I teach it, and one of the core concepts is that contrast is the language of the nervous system, because neurons fire or they don't. There's no in between. And you would not go to a movie, read a book, or watch a TV show and rave about it to your friends if it did not have enough contrast in it, because it would be boring. And your nervous system will not let you live a dull story. You might not know how to tell it in the most interesting way, but we are all living a bestseller. All right. I'm going to start by sharing my screen before we do any introductions and whatnot, because if I can even figure out, all right, I'm going to take a deep breath and find my, oh, here we go. In my crisis, I covered up my Canva screen. Okay, we're going to set some ground rules, and there's some pretty tough ground rules. You can imagine that when in talking about religious trauma, that that evokes a lot of strong feelings in some people that have some very that are very locked into their own belief systems. And it's very important to us and for all of you, we want to make this a really safe container, that it's positive, okay? And respect is non-negotiable. No preaching, proselytizing, or debating theology. We can, I'm happy to have interesting, curious discussions to talk about how to restory and reframe and see things in different ways. No trolling, harassment, or disruption. It's just not going to be tolerated. You'll be removed from the meeting if there's trolling and harassment in the chat or in the meeting. Okay, we really want, it's very, very important to us that this is a really strong, beautiful container. We're happy to have good discussions, but there's no space for hurtful or dismissive or comments such as that. Okay, privacy and confidentiality, like the replay to this is going to be sent out. If you share something that you really don't want shared in the replay, please let me know. I'll take it out. Like, I'm not here to, like, it's okay. Like, we can, like, these things can be edited. And you're also welcome to message me a question privately and, or Stephanie, and we will just we'll just ask it anonymously. You don't have to out yourself here if you have a question. Okay. But we're not here to, it's really important that this feels safe. Compassionate communication, zero tolerance. Okay. We're not going to give people warnings on harassment and nastiness and Stephanie and I get plenty of that in our DMs and comments on our social media and sometimes in other places too. So like, we're not fucking around with it. Just be kind. All right. Radical responsibility for your own body and your own experience. Nobody knows your body better than you do. Okay. The techniques here are designed to support your own healing. They are extraordinarily low risk. If you have a bad reaction, please reach out to me. Okay. It's unlikely, but this is designed to make you feel better. If that doesn't happen, please, 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 please reach out. Okay. We're available. Yeah, all the legalese, hold us harmless in all of this. That's part of the radical responsibility. We're going to be doing very simple things, but trauma sometimes comes up in unexpected ways. And so we're here once a month. You can easily interact with me on Substack if you want to do that. You can email me if there are issues, but please, I just say that out of my, I'll tell you a little bit about it, out of like having a professional lawsuit. Please just take some radical responsibility for yourself. So yeah, this is going to be fun. We had a request for humor. We're going to try and be, I don't know how funny we're going to be today, but we will take that.
I'd like to order some humor.
Yes, we'll definitely, there is in one of the exercises I will share, or in what Stephanie's going to teach, I will share how how I use it humorously for myself. All right. So welcome to Rewiring Religion. I'm Melanie Weller, and Stephanie Drury is with me hosting. And so, actually, hang on a second. I made a workbook for you all. And the slides are don't worry about, like, you don't, in the, hold on, in the context of, in the fray of not having the link work, I did not grab the link to the workbook to make it handy to share for you. So I will do that now. While I'm doing that, Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Stephanie Drury. I always feel like I need to say my age. I will be 50 1 week from today. Let's see. I started Stuff Christian Culture Likes in blog form when I was 31. So it's been almost 20 years that I've been doing this because my parents, my dad, most of you know this, my dad was a Southern Baptist minister, and my parents were with this missionary organization called the Navigators. We never went overseas. We always lived, I grew up in the South, like different cities in the South, but I just always sensed like something was off. They were big James Dobson advocates. I'm like, why are these people not consistent when they're behind closed doors? What's going on with this God stuff? And I was diagnosed with depression when I was 13. I feel like I have repressed stuff that still hasn't surfaced, even though I've been in therapy for 30 years. So it's just something I'm always kind of working towards and wanting to let that trauma feel safe enough to heal and surface so I can deal with it and pull it out. And I've just had so much help once I was able to name, oh, just get some clarity on this is what's going on and I'm not crazy. And I've been told to doubt myself so that they, you know, I'm not trying to blame my family, but it's more like the cult of personality that these politicians and thought leaders and pastors exact on so many people are causing all this pain, and they feed on our self-doubt and our mistrusting our own intuition. So once I was, you know, I was always kind of the kid who they were telling me, like, don't say that, like, don't tell the truth. I'd get in trouble for saying the truth. And I'd say to my parents, I'm going to tell my teachers what you guys do to us here at home. And they go, if you do that, they will take you away from us and you will end up in a worse home than you're in now. So that kept me quiet. But that also let me know that I was validated in realizing something's wrong here. And so just that truth has been the only thing I think that's kept me sane. I think that's what sanity is. I think that's what sobriety is facing reality. And it's really painful to do that because you have to realize these people didn't love me the way I need to be loved. But then there's also the huge realization of I'm the love of my life. And it's great to find it in other people. But if I'm depending on someone else to affirm me in that way, I'm really setting myself up to possibly be abused. I'm betraying myself, bare minimum. So the Self Christian Culture Likes community, kind of, I started it because everyone had a blog then, and then it kind of got a lot of people telling me back the same stuff that they had experienced was similar to me. And that was so incredibly healing just to know I wasn't the only one. And I'm so grateful to be able to keep it going on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah.
All right. So I thank you, Stephanie. I have followed Stephanie for a good 10 years, probably like for a long, like maybe the whole time for a long of your blog. I followed you for a long time. And I reached out to her to start this discussion about religious trauma because it's a piece of my own story. I was raised Lutheran, and Lutherans are very much not fundamentalists, but in my family, it was applied with a lot of fundamentalism. And I was forced to be in choir, and in choir, I was forced to mouth the words. And that shaped my relationship with music over the years in some really challenging ways. And like I've just, I'm going to be 54 in March, and and I'm finally learning to love music. And music is finally starting to feel really good to me. And at this point, 30 years in physical therapy and athletic training really gifted me a reputation as a body whisperer. And I collected credentials and certifications over the years, like some people collect fine wines. I needed all the external validation, the external authority to say that I was good enough. And then in the middle, when my life fell apart and I was in the midst of a health crisis, marriage crisis, and lawsuit crisis, all in very close proximity to each other, my life just didn't make sense. None of my logical skills were like, my conventional skills were helping me make sense of my life. And I ended up talking to an astrologer, and things like in that started to help make sense of so much of the nonsense in my life. And what I realized through that is that our anatomy mimics the zodiac. We are made in the image of the zodiac, like with extraordinary detail. And I created a form of energy medicine out of that to go with my vast array of osteopathic manual therapy skills. And it and for me, the pinnacle of that was really one day when a patient walked into my office who had a suicide planned for that evening. And he was living in a nightmare of a hallucination. He had had an acute event that brought this on and a huge history of religious trauma. And 90 minutes later, he walked out 90% better. And I walked out with my fearless presence. And we really saved each other that day. And since then, I have really been passionate about bringing together the mystical with medicine, bringing mythology in with neurology, and really bridging ancient and modern science so that we can all be fully expressed. We are not wired for facts, we are wired for stories. And that is the hard fact of our nervous systems. We are storytellers fundamentally. And it can be hard sometimes to know if you're being kidnapped or rescued in the middle of things, because mechanically those things can look the same. Some of what really inspired my evolution into rewiring religion is a lot of frustration with existing somatic education programs that are out there, because they they often message, and I don't think it's really intentional, but when I look through the comments, I see this a lot, that like I remember vividly one comment on somebody who has a very large following, and the person said, "So what you're telling me is that every crumb of my being is a trauma response." And no, not every crumb of your being is a trauma response. We are survivors, we are pleasure seekers. And I don't think that it's like you'll never sell trauma-informed healing to the whole world. And trauma-informed healing is really great. But what's at the root of all of this is time, perception, and processing. And your body is a clock made in the image of the zodiac. We are all clocks, and we live inside of the great clock. And time, perception, and processing is really to me, it's the key. And we would all like to have a different relationship with our time. Maybe you want more downtime, more me time, more playtime, more stage time, whatever that is. And so I'm going to share some of that along the way. And I think I just explained to you one of my slides that we'll get to eventually and all of that. But
real quick,
anyway,
when I hear
yeah.
you say, Melanie, when you talk about astrology, I'm hearing it through the lens of someone who like maybe is newly deconstructed or was raised to be scared of astrology. I mean, we evangelicals were, I don't know about you Lutherans, but it like terrified me for a while. And I've really come around on it because I see it now as energy, and the planets are bodies that hold energy that's transmute, and the ways things interact. I think it's extremely scientific, but I also don't want people to think like you have to be all whole hog on astrology in order to heal.
Absolutely, absolutely not. Yeah, no,
piece.
I really don't. It doesn't. Yeah, I have no attachment to you believing in astrology either, and I have a very different approach than what you. Later, if you want to go to my website, there's a Zodiac and the Vagus Nerve Workbook that has lots of pictures that shows the like foundation of like the imagery, like anatomy pictures next to constellation representations to show you how that works. But astrology is really those stories were really portals to discovering an expanded view of myself. Like the stories within astrology helped me realize that there was more true about myself than I was connected with at the time. So as a storytelling framework, I find it very healing, and it can guide, and I think it's helpful for guiding remedies and there's an incredible body of research on how our nervous systems sync with the solar system and the cosmic weather. So there are angles within the body that mimic like the axial tilt of the Earth and the angles between the pole stars the Earth orients towards. And it's just really magical. And we are wired for wonder and awe and mystery. And that's part of why we like going to church, or why we like, that's part of what people get out of religion and out of spirituality. And the research on the value of spirituality separate from religion is like, if you could put it in a pill, it would probably heal everything. Like it is, we have no other intervention, especially for mental health, that comes close to it. And spirituality is 27%, maybe 29% genetic.
Okay, that's
So,
interesting. I've never heard that.
And if your mother was spiritual, whether or not she was also religious, you are super protected against depression.
Well,
And
that does not track with my depressed family history on both sides. Pastors on both sides.
Totally. But, there's always the, like, it could be worse kind of thing, like there's, but it brings resilience. Like, that resilience is genetic,
Resilience.
Provides some genetic resilience so that you can move
and
through.
Feeling connected to a storyline, which is why I think people stay in these toxic situations, because of feeling like the connection. So, I mean, just to reiterate the astrology piece, it's like, everyone needs to go towards what feels good for you. Pay attention to if this, doesn't resonate. Stay true to that. And you're trying to stay connected to your story. Someone just asked if we can define spirituality.
It's your relationship with your inner authority, whereas religion is your relationship with outer authority. So really what we're doing here is getting you in relationship with your inner authority.
I love that. That's the greatest. Because once you have that, you can't be manipulated.
Absolutely. You will know, your body will tell you what is true and what is not true. And you can find that internal GPS. And so we are going to really try and help you connect with your inner authority in meaningful ways today. I'm going to explain some of the neuroscience, some of the differences between religious trauma and other types of trauma. And I will tell you, like, we're already halfway through our hour because we started late. We're probably going to run over. There's so much more to tell you. Just know that I'm giving you like a really high level overview. And the goal here is to really give you an experience of this and to leave you feeling better in your body today. All right. So I'm going to go back to sharing now. Okay. So as we were, Stephanie, can you see my screen?
No.
No. Oh, hold on.
I can see your word cloud.
You're the word cloud. Okay. So we get a lot out of being in community with each other, out of being in church. We get a lot of belonging, purpose, practices. We get frameworks, we get structure. People love structure. That's why, why we gather together. A lot of people want to be told what to do. We are wired to be together, and we will do anything to be part of the herd. And very often, the reason abused women stay in abusive relationships is because it's scarier to leave than it is the dysfunctional situation is familiar, and leaving the dysfunctional situation is unfamiliar. And we are fundamentally wired for what's familiar, not what's right for us. Okay, but all of that can obviously go sideways and create a lot of fear and gaslighting and shame and existential dread and manipulation in the worst case scenarios. These are some of the things that people shared that they wanted. So I'm aspiring to at least get most of to answer a lot of these today over the course, and that's why I asked in the chat as well, but about healing past trauma, navigating the added stress of the current political situation. How do we care for our bodies and minds to create safety while addressing past trauma and enduring current trauma? We'll talk about a little bit about religious authoritarian differences, like how that works in the brain, dynamics of authoritarian trauma. Okay, ways to deepen trust. We're going to go, like connecting with your inner authority is absolutely going to deepen your trust. And I'm going to give you a very mechanical way to do that today. Memories of when we lived as one being. I don't know if we'll have time for that, but I love that question because I think the Egyptian myth of Isis and Osiris really tells the story of that. Humor and, and learning to trust others. So trust is definitely a big theme. I've, for my clinical expertise is in treating the vagus nerve as a pinched nerve in the body, and your vagus nerve is deeply involved in trust. We decide whether we trust or distrust somebody within like less than half a second of meeting them. So trust is very much a subconscious mechanism. It happens very fast, and but the more you're in touch with your internal authority, the more discernment you have there. I advocate for time-informed rehab over trauma-informed rehab because time perception and processing are at the root of a vast array of diagnoses. Like virtually every mental health diagnosis you know has a time perception and processing issue associated with it. A lot of neurological disorders do too. Parkinson's disease, dystonia, even anorexia has time perception and processing issues, and our bodies are clocks. So, and in the time science research with the physicists, as well as neurologists, like they know what parts of the brain work with mediate different parts of time. Like your cerebellum, deep in your brain, in your subconscious, does sub 1 second units of time, whereas your frontal lobe does seconds and minutes, and your parietal lobe does duration estimation. But they talk about the missing cerebral clock, which to me is hilarious because when I read that, I was like, oh, your body is the clock. Let me show you where the clock is. So we're going to talk about that. We're unveiling, getting you in touch with your the great clock that you are. There is a lot of overlap in the brain, the parts of the brain that you would rehabilitate for trauma, as well as the ones that are involved in time perception and processing. So there are very good trauma-informed practices. Like if you were a clinician doing trauma-informed care, if you've been a client or patient in a system, they are also probably teaching you to repattern your relationship with time and to improve your time perception and processing. But I think we can be, or like in my practice, I find that when you can be more specific about it, and that you can, it just opens up for magical changes for change to happen much faster.
Mel,
When you're yes.
I can't call you Mel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We haven't talked that much. I'm just calling you Mel. I mean, we haven't talked enough, maybe 5 or 6 times. We're at the Mel phase. Okay. Someone's asking in the question, or in the chat, how about dysautonomia, like POTS? P-O-T-S?
Yep. So the other piece that I would say yes to time perception and processing issues. The other piece with dysautonomia and many other places, and that isn't really addressed in the trauma-informed space, is the geometry of the body. So your like the angles of your joints and the relationship of those angles, like your biomechanics, and I know that that's like a big heady kind of concept, but the correcting the neurology, doing the nervous system exercises does not always rehabilitate the geometry of the body. And when the vagus nerve, for example, with dysautonomia, when the vagus nerve gets pinched, like in your diaphragm, it gets pinched where we have horizontal structures in the body. So it can get pinched at your vocal cords, at the base of your skull, at your heart, at your diaphragm, at your kidneys, at your pelvic floor, where there are anatomical horizontal structures. And that when that geometry or that relationship between compression and tension in the body isn't right, that's a huge part of dysautonomia. So we're going to, so I really bring the neurology and the geometry together. And because of my physical therapy background, I have a very unique view of that compared to people that, do very good work teaching nervous system rehab, but don't have the hands-on experience with people's bodies to understand the geometry. And so I've had lots of experience knowing what, sometimes the neuro exercises will fix the geometry, but not always. But when you can bring them together, you can get much more profound changes, and it alleviates the need. You don't have to do as much to rehabilitate your nervous system, because a lot of times, like my people, when I see them, they, it's like filling their cup is draining them. Like they've got all the tools, and we don't need tools. We need a different way of being. Or you have to take those tools. Sometimes tools are great. When you're in an acute situation, the tools can be really helpful. But the gap is in taking those tools into a new way of being so that you're not bound to the tools day in and day out just to survive.
Someone is commenting that they're concerned that you're going through this really important, heady material really fast. And they wish you could spend more time on it, but I know you're feeling crunched for time. And I was thinking that the fact that we're recording this is kind of, I was just figuring I'll go back and listen to it some more.
Yeah, you can absolutely listen to it again. And there's going to be, like, there is more. I'm going to, if you go to my Substack, I, like I've write about this kind of stuff. For paid subscribers, I'm starting classes twice a month, and you get a link to schedule time with me as well. So there
we'll
is
be
more.
Doing this every month.
Like there is more. This
here.
is not the, I will tell you, and I'm mindful because I love nothing more than delivering a fire hose's worth of information. And but I know that doesn't get, like, it's, that can be hard to digest. And so I'm really just, what I want you to come away from this with is that your body is a clock, and to think about time. Okay. And and time is like, then that as your own clock is in order, you're going and more organized, you're going to have more access to your internal authority. Okay. And all of our belief systems, whether we believe we live eternally or we believe it all ends when we die, are about your relationship with time. And those belief systems really drive how we spend our time here.
Say more about that. Like, that is totally a new concept to me.
So if you, like, we choose to behave in certain ways, like if we believe that we, like I have a close family member who basically got excommunicated from her religion through no fault of her own. And her mother, like, is really like, this is like 30 years later, is just starting to soften and talk to her, because her mother thought she was going to go to hell for talking to her daughter after that point.
How is that related to time?
Well, but that's
not to gloss
right. So,
over
well,
the tragedy
it's just driving. So it just shaped the time, like how she spent her time. Like time, her time was not like, then her daughter became not part of her time. But like it might, if you believe that, but even if you believe that, like you'll be rewarded in the afterlife for good deeds, or that you're working out your karma and that you're doing different things, you know, it shapes it shapes your time. I have another friend who follows a more Ayurvedic or Indian philosophy, and he's planted a bunch of fig trees to help resolve his karma. You know, we make these, you know, just choosing not to, you know, it helps establish our moral code. Like we often, uh, you know, most religions are pretty explicit about it's a good idea not to murder someone else, you know, or that you need to pray however many times per day.
Oh
That you need to
God.
bless your food.
This is finally clicking for me
It drives how
because
you
like
spend your time.
my parents disowned me and my brother and sister when we asked them to go to therapy with us. Like they did this separately to each of us. And so I know it's like not just me. They just didn't want to be held accountable and called on the carpet. But like now, you know, I have my own kids. I'm like, how could you possibly do that to your children? It's because of their relationship with time, of how they view eternity. And like, I'm doing the right thing by cutting off contact with my children. Like there's something about their relationship to time that
Yep.
is making this what makes sense to them. Okay, that's
Yeah,
really
the eternal
helpful.
consequences are not worth the short-term
Yes, because we
risk.
were taught to be worried. I grew up being taught that we could get raptured any minute. And that's a terrifying way to think. Did your screen just go dark? Something weird happened to my
Oh, I
anyway.
just stopped sharing. I thought.
Oh, that was all it was. Okay. But just realizing that, yeah, they were conditioning how I viewed time to make eternity more important than the right now. But Jane Wheedlin, my adoptive mother, just commented that she feels like she lives in the future because she's terrified by what she perceives as coming. And I relate to that so much, like having diagnosed anxiety from just being in frozen mode. Like, okay, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. It just renders you helpless. And that's another way that you relate to time. So if we can heal that, how we see the time, then that will release a lot of these attachments that we have that are showing up and impeding our quality of life.
Yeah, for me, like I was told that because I liked being by myself. I mean, I think I have I'm fine being social too, but I have a very strong inner hermit, and you know, being alone growing up was just safe for me. But I was always told, well, you don't want to be part of this family. And so family, and my mom's, she were like 2 years ago, she said it to me again, and I'd totally forgotten that she used to tell me that all the time. You just don't want to be part of this family. What a child hears is that you don't belong in this family, you know. But it drove you know, I spent my time alone because that was, you know, it like
It was
that is
safer,
part of
I'm
what kept
sure.
me, what was safer for sure. But you know, that like you don't belong in, like if you, like if Stephanie told me, like until very recently, I'm getting better with it. But if Stephanie had said, "Oh, Melanie, she's my sister," I would have considered that a full-on threat. Like where my body was like not into having people call me familial, you know, talk to me about familial terms. But but those beliefs about yourself and your spirituality, but everything is like it drives how you spend your time. If you don't think that the afterlife really matters one way or another, you know, I have a good friend, I would say music is his religion, and he like joyfully goes to concerts all the time, which has been, you know, and has really helped me expand my relationship with music and heal that, like watching, you know, as I've leaned into uh, trying to explore that. But he's an atheist, and he is just happy to try and extract as much joy out of life, you know, which is just a kind
Isn't
of
it
a
so
foreign thing to
funny
me.
that
That's not how I came.
I was taught as a Baptist / evangelical that was bad. You don't want to enjoy your life.
Yep.
The worst
Yeah.
thing you can possibly teach a child. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So everything is about I mean, really, like a lot of things are about your relationship with time, but like I really suck at play. It's part of that.
Mm.
And so like I learned, you know, so like I'm in New Orleans now. The universe has put me here to learn to heal my music wounds and learn how to play a little better. All right. Okay. Back to, all right. So we're going to talk a little bit of the neuroscience. And this is where so religious trauma is different than other trauma in the nervous system. And probably the top three parts of the brain, the three at the top there, are the biggest differences in the research that I've been exposed to. That religious trauma, you get more right amygdala activity than with other types of trauma. And your right amygdala is primarily fear mediating. Your amygdala together, they're emotional assessment. Basically, when you have an orgasm, you can thank your left amygdala for that. So they're not all bad. You know, it's not entirely fear. So I think your amygdala get kind of a bad rap. But you do get a lot of right amygdala dominance with religious trauma. It lights up your default mode network, which is your storytelling network in your brain. And so it can keep you really stuck in a particular story. And the most interesting part to me is the involvement of the right caudate nucleus, because it's not really part of your usual protective fear responses. But what it does when that religious trauma basically can heavily influence your will to get things done, like your will to move forward or to break your own, like carve your own path kind of things, or just get, like you might know stuff needs to get done, but it's just really hard to do it. But you're not depressed. It's just your will to do it gets just gets suppressed, and your relationship with reward, your dopamine circuits get suppressed, and it's harder to experience reward. Other parts of the brain involved with religious trauma are insula, which is your insula is is deep inside your frontal lobe, and it's connected to self-esteem. Your ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is connected to beliefs and identity. You know, and certainly people you know, they're, you know, like growing up, I identified as Lutheran. You know, you put a lot of identity in that. It's like you're, you know, in a similar way to sports teams and professions, you know, your ventromedial prefrontal cortex is beliefs and identity, and particularly about yourself. Things towards the middle of the brain are about you. Your things about towards the outside of the brain about your relationship with the outside world. So your dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex, that's towards the outside, is about the adaptation of your beliefs and identity and your ethics. That is also the part of the brain, like when somebody goes from suicide ideation to suicide planning, they go into their dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And then the anterior cingulate cortex, which is towards the front. If you were going to, if you have my zodiac workbook, and or if you look at it, and think about how the Aries ram's horns live in the brain, it's where the ram's horns would connect to the head in the front, or like, and the anterior cingulate cortex is the heart of your neurological soul. It's where compassion, connection, tolerance, acceptance, those kinds of things live. But if you're stuck in a lot of fear, it can be very difficult to access, can be harder to access those things. So in the research, people with authoritarian parents, which is more common in the children of immigrants, they have higher levels of imposter syndrome, because it's scary to be more authentic, or that, you know, there's this like, I'm not allowed to be, I have to be who my parents want me to be, not who I want to be. But whether you have authoritarian religion, authoritarian parents, or authoritarian government, it's basically the same. There's more research on the parenting and religion part, but authoritarianism keeps you in fear and keeps you out of connection, compassion, tolerance, acceptance. Okay. Was that clear, Stephanie?
Well, this is not my area of expertise, but I know that I will come. I mean, I've got ADHD.
Yeah.
It's real bad. As long as I
Yeah.
have notes, I'm good though.
So it's the, yeah. So the overarching, like I would say, take home message for those of you that aren't, because I know some of you are more clinically inclined on this call, but you're going to have more fear, less will, more difficulty experiencing pleasure and reward with religious trauma in unique ways in your brain compared to other trauma.
And the good news is that now that we know, we've isolated how that forms, we can undo it and heal
You
it.
can totally, right. And so when you know what you're dealing with, you can unwind it.
That's the best. Oh my God.
And so I like to think of it in the context of timestamps. And if you've had some neurosomatic training, you might know the term neurotags, and that's part of it. A neurotag it's the concept of your neurons that fire together, wire together. Like, that you get these, it's kind of like if you go back and visit your parents and like you're always 12 years old when you're back with your family and like those old patterns, that's because like your 12-year-old neurotag gets activated when you go back into your parents' house. But there's also a mythological component, and I use myth very much in the range of archetype and storytelling. And even in neuroscience terms, like the hard facts of our brain are that we're all hallucinating. Reality is just the hallucination we agree upon. And so we all have our own mythology, our own stories. And there's the geometry, and I would say even the geology of it. It can be very difficult to be successful in an unsuccessful environment. Your nervous system regulation. I'm a huge fan of things like feng shui and organizing your space for good flow, clearing out clutter, because it makes a huge difference. And it's one way, like when my nervous system was going haywire after a foot fracture, and the foot that I didn't break, or both of my feet were burning, had tons of burning pain, and the one that I didn't break was worse than the one that I did. Rearranging my environment is what got me over the threshold. And like all of my expert techniques were not helping in the way that I really wanted them to. So, but these create timestamps. And like in New Orleans, we have before and after Katrina, or like we all have before and after the pandemic. These
before times, like everyone knows what you're talking about when you say the before times. That's so helpful, this time concept. Okay. I'm liking this. I'm kind of excited.
Yeah. So sometimes these timestamps just create distortions in our time perception and processing. But as you can get them moving and get them rewired and restored, then you can, it's much easier to move, you can move forward, and it takes the charge out of them. And so that they're not living rent, the timestamps aren't living rent free in your nervous system. Okay, so we're going to fix it by improving time perception and processing through senses and movement. Your nervous system is sort of at the neurology piece of it is fundamentally input, processing, output. So if you're taking in all your visual information as a threat, that's a very hard way to walk through the world. If breathing is threatening to your nervous system, I mean, obviously we all have to breathe, but when I test this with clients, sometimes people respond poorly to breathing exercises. And, and so you have to retrain the body or open up the possibility that taking in sensory information is safe. And that
Someone just
movement is safe.
commented, oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Someone just
Yeah.
commented that he's curious. Chase said he's curious about how daydreaming and role playing in your imagination can come into play when you're trying to deal with your past religious trauma. And it just made me think how I'm bad at daydreaming, because I feel like because of my past trauma, that informs me having to stay in the present and stay realistic, and can't waste time to daydream and use my imagination. But in my healing, I feel like, and this, I feel like it relates to what you're saying right now, that if you're like using different neural pathways and you're like carving new little pathways in your brain, that is a healing mechanism, just to imagine a different outcome.
Play and imagination visualization are the superhighway to transformation. I can give you all, my profession is terrible at giving you very boring clinical exercises, and they can be very helpful too. But if you can rewire through play and imagination, it's amazing. I have, in the way that I work with archetype and that kind of visualization in the body, I'll, like, for example, I have so much fun with this. And it's part of why I want to start doing more groups. But your sphenoid bone that sits behind your eyes looks like an owl. And you can, I've had groups of people, like taking somebody who's very restricted with their neck motion, and that, and I can feel that it's rooted in their sphenoid bone, which makes up part of the base of your skull. And I will have the room imagine a big, beautiful owl is flying behind this person's eyes, and just to have the owl really spread its wings and be strong and beautiful and get a good idea of what it looks like. And I won't touch the person, and then but I will test them, have the participants in the class do that, and then retest them. And the person's neck motion is completely normal because other people imagined something for them.
That transference of energy.
Right. And so it's extraordinary how we co-regulate to each other, how our imagination can help ourselves, and how our imagination can help each other.
I love the concept of co-regulation, because it makes me think of, when you give birth, they have you do skin to skin with it, and that's co-regulation. It's just like, that's what the initial moment you're supposed to do that, and you have to keep it through your life. That's why family is important. You're just in society and friendships, just that you're in a constant state as a human of co-regulating, and that's why we are so tribal.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is all clicking. Thank you for letting me think out loud here.
All right. So to transform your timestamps, and we'll get more specific about this as we go along. But I want you just to check in with your body. First thing you're going to do is take a baseline test with your range of motion. You can just like see how your neck moves, see how your shoulder moves. You can rotate. I'm going to stay sitting here, but you can do a squat. You could stand on one leg, test your balance. You could, like sometimes I take my glasses off and look at some text because I get really good visual improvements with these exercises. But just to take a baseline test and if you have, if you have a physical disability, thank you for asking that question. Like you can move whatever part you can. Our brains do not see the difference between doing something and imagining doing something. So you could even like imagine something that you would like to do in your mind, do the exercise, and then reimagine it and see how that changes. Is it easier to see? Is it easier to feel? But you could, you could test if you can lift your big toes or like even one finger, like just to even your breath. You could just like pay attention to your breath and feel the resistance. Do the exercise or imagine doing the exercise. You don't actually have to do it. and then retest. Okay, so we're going to test, perform the exercise, and then repeat it, because you're probably going to feel a little better, and that you're going to want to get that reward of like, oh, look, this made a difference. And if you, and if it doesn't feel better afterwards, that's okay. You can just pick, like, you'll find something that feels better. Just, you are learning the language of your body. Like, when I broke my foot, I was hiking in France and the ground gave out underneath me from my right foot, and I fell several feet down the cliff to the right side. And for me, walking, like doing anything with my head to the right was really challenging for a while, because my whole, like my right neck, my right low back, my right knee, everything would just completely lock up on the right side. So it took me a little while to work back into doing some of that kind of stuff. I had to just do more to the left to make the right side of my body happy. So like, you're just learning the language. What, what is it like? What is it not like? And that's all it is. Okay. Okay. So do your baseline testing. I'm going to, I'm going to stop sharing, I think, for a second here. Okay. So we're going to teach you 3 restore exercises today. So we're going to start that, but I just want everybody just to collect a little baseline information. You can even stand up if you want. Like, you could turn your body side to side, see where how your rotation is. My right calf is a little tighter than my left one. I could do a calf stretch, and, or hip flex, you could do a stretch if you have an area that you're tight, but just pick something. Okay. I am going to, I know in religious texts, or especially Christianity, there's the concept of thought, word, and deed. And that concept is present in many different religions and belief systems. But we're going to work backwards for it, doing an action, a word, and a thought. Because your brain is 80% input from your body. Your body is informing your thoughts. The reason my client got out of suicide planning was, so his clock in his body was stopped. I could put numbers to what suicide ideation and planning look like in the body in terms of range of motion and biomechanics. His body was telling his brain it was dead, and so he was trying to match that on the outside. As above, so below. And I've seen this over and over and over. And so we're going to start with helical breathing. It's a great way to decompress your vagus nerve at multiple levels, especially your diaphragm. So you're going to take your left ankle, put it in front of your right ankle. Take your right hand and reach it across your body, and your left hand behind your head. Okay, you can add a little bit of tension there. When you breathe in, try to breathe into the backside of your heart to get your rib cage to expand behind you. And then hold your inhale for 3, hold for a count of 6. You can count as fast as you want. And if you can't get in this position, it's okay. Just imagine it or do the pieces of it that you can. And then exhale longer, like you're blowing through a straw, for 12 repetitions. So just do maybe 3 or 5 breaths like this. And in all humans, the right side of the diaphragm has more muscle mass than the left. So theoretically, the right side will always win. And so this takes you out of that right-sided diaphragm dominance. And it helps to dome up your diaphragm. It can go from being flat, or when we get dysfunctional, the diaphragm gets flatter. So it helps to dome it back up. But this is a really nice exercise that unwinds a number of things. And if you want an extra, I'll tell you what, remind me at the end and I'll give you an extra thought to go with it. But let's just we'll do it like this to start. How was that for everybody? Like, so then go retest your motion, like see, after doing it, you turn your head a little further. Is anything looser? Awesome. Yeah, this is my signature exercise. I love this one because it just
that was
knocks
kind of
out
amazing.
so much nonsense in the body. Okay. And if you want to do it one more time, when you inhale into the backside of your heart, there's an Andean proverb that says your future is behind you, propelling you forward. And your past is in front of you, waiting for you to make peace with it and clear your way. And so when you breathe into the backside of your heart, imagine that you're inviting your good future in, you're connecting with your good future to pull magic into truth. I think in the Egyptian mythology, their cardinal directions are knowledge, wisdom, magic, and truth. So I always think you bring knowledge from above into wisdom below, magic from behind to show up as truth in front of us. But that's the Z, that's the time axis of the body. The Z axis would come through the heart too. So that's your time axis. All right. And then you can see if you get any extra results from connecting with your good future, inviting it in. All right. We're going to go to the next one. Yeah, and for limited mobility, that tends to be very individualized. I've worked with quadriplegics in this way before, so there are lots of ways to do that. I will endeavor to put out create something and write about that more, because I don't think there's really that much out there for mobility limited people. So, but don't underestimate the power of visualizing it or getting even somebody else to do the exercise, to do it for you. So there's some evidence that like if Stephanie couldn't sleep, I could set the intention that I was going to sleep for Stephanie, and Stephanie would feel more rested.
I've had that happen. Something really similar to that happened before.
And so if you and I have in my Sacred Stomp email, if you go to my website and sign up for Sacred Stomp, there's lots of email or lots of exercises in there that are applied this way. And also for, the people that really need the trauma rehab don't show up here. Like there are people like the authoritarian people, they're the ones that really need a lot of trauma rehab, and they're not gonna get it, but they might want to spend their time differently, which is part of why I'm interested in messaging around time.
They say narcissists won't go to therapy.
Right. Yeah.
The people who really need it, they just won't go. It's all their victims that are seeking.
Yeah. But you can do these exercises on behalf of someone else. Just like I told you the owl story, somebody else could do this exercise for you on your behalf, and it will help you. Or to do it in a group and have it like do it for each other, kind of like a Lynn McTaggart's Power of 8 groups, to do it in that style. Okay, so next one. All right, so you're going to bring your attention to your breath. And I'm going to take down this slide because it's going to be much easier for me to just show you this. Okay, so you're going to test your breath. Ideally, if you can, put a hand on your chest so you can just feel how your breath is moving. I like to, if you have the ability, to put one on the front and one on the back so that you can see how your chest is moving. Ideally, you should have really nice movement forward back, but when we're anxious, it tends to be more vertical. Okay, so now I want you to think of something that you know is true. For a lot of people, name works. Like if I say, my name is Melanie, my breath feels a little bit easier, a little bit lighter. If I say I'm currently in New Orleans, Louisiana, that also is lighter. If I say my name is Bob, my body does not want to breathe in. If I say drinking bleach is good for me, my body does not want to breathe at all. It just stops. There's more resistance to it. So to think about something that you know is true, something that you know is false, that's pretty hardcore. Like name usually works, but not always. And just see if you can start to feel the difference. Because when we have trauma and stress, and one of the challenges with religious trauma is that it's baked into our culture, to our homes, to our lives. Like it's, we become like, when we're in it, we're like fish that, fish don't know that the water exists. They're just in the water just is there. And so, and when we have a big trauma, like if you hit your thumb with a hammer and really hurt your thumb, that's, a trauma for your thumb. But if you tap it softly 1,000,000 times, you're going to end up with a swollen thumb. And that's how a lot of this works. All right, Julie wants to know how visualization. All right, I'll come. Okay, I'll come to that part of the chat again, but just like see if you can get and like let me know in the chat if you're able to discern some yes, no in your body. And you can, okay, good. Okay, so sometimes it is a little hard. It can be a little hard to discern. And you could also feel like for me, and I like sometimes I can feel like I'll just feel things kind of like contract for a no or expand for a yes. Or sometimes like when I work with patients, overwhelmingly, their bodies will pull me in for a yes and push me off for a no. When I'm talking to their bodies, that's almost always how they want to tell me yes and no. So there's, right. And so you might find that like a no is like the breath is more up at your shoulders, whereas a yes, maybe it's more horizontal. Yeah. So just keep practicing. It's like learning a new language. You're not going to learn, a lot of us, I mean, I know I did this for years that, I was speaking English to my French speaking body and I had to learn French to get it to be agreeable, So
last week, my son, who's 23, he's like having, relationship stuff, and he was about to have a phone call with this person, and he's like, I'm really nervous. Should I tell them that I want to take a break, or what should I, he's asking me, he was wanting me to tell him what to do. And I told him, I was like, here's your solar plexus. Like it's right, this part, right in your rib, under your rib cage, and pay attention to that. And that will tell you what to do. Like it will feel looser and more expanded when you're doing what's aligned with your truth. And it will feel tight. It'll hurt. You'll feel it there if you're going in the wrong direction. And he's like, okay. And then he had the phone call and he just followed his heart. And I was just so grateful to be able to teach him that, because I feel like I was denied. I was taught to mistrust that. They would tell us there's a psalm, the heart is deceitful above all things. Who can know it? Don't trust your intuition. That's voodoo. That's witchcraft, that kind of thing. And it's like, well, how do you follow, how do you experience love? I feel like that they wired us to mistrust love. And I think that's what a lot of my anxiety and attachment stuff came from. So it's just so helpful. It's healing for me to be able to pass that on to my son. It like helps me learn, to see him learn from it, you know? So just talking about it, I'm just so grateful to have found this, and it lines up with the exercise you just had us do.
The other way you can use it, and I wasn't planning on teaching it this way, but you could like think of somebody who you have some conflict with, whether that's like, so like now it's pretty good for me, but like I used to ask like, well, like, how is my mother breathing in my body? And I'd get this completely different breathing pattern than if I was just feeling my own breath. And so then I would go back and do helical breathing for how my mother is, with the intention of for how my mother is breathing in my body, to regulate for that. And then come back and ask, how is my mother breathing in my body? And it's better. So you can do whether it's your mother or your pastor or men at large or women at large or political people with political power. This is how you evict them from your nervous system. Regulate they don't get to dictate how you breathe.
Oh my God, Elon Musk has been breathing in my body.
What'd you say, Stephanie?
Elon Musk has been breathing in my body.
Yes.
It's time to get him out.
Yep. Get those people out of your body. All right. And then the last one is Stephanie's exercise. All right.
Yes, Melanie asked me for a technique that I have found helpful. And like I said, I've got pretty bad ADHD. It's really hard for me to focus for very long. And I signed up a few years ago for a course from a neuroscientist on doing a toxic thought detox. And it was so helpful, but it was so much information. It was a lot of work. And I can tell this really brilliant woman was trying to make it as simple as she could for us, her customers. But I just had to break it down even further. So I kind of distilled the entire course to one of these things that I do all the time. And the first step was noticing where something makes me tense up. Like I've just lived so much of my life holding fear in different parts and not ever paying attention to it. So now that I'm more aware of it, part of noticing it, like as a responsibility to myself, I'm like, I need to ask myself, why am I believing this? And what if I believe the opposite? And it's like, it's a lot of, it's stuff like, oh, is my boss mad at me? What are they going to say at the meeting that they just scheduled with me? Oh no, I'm going to drive over this bridge. I mean, it's real. Nothing bad has ever happened to me on a bridge, and I drive over them all the time, but I don't prefer to, you know what I mean? So whenever I can catch myself with one of those thoughts, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? What am I responding to? And just, I try to immediately flip it. I kind of picture myself catching it in a net, like Patrick Star jellyfishing in SpongeBob, and just try to, okay, what's the exact opposite of that? Oh my God, my boss is going to tell me I'm great, wants to promote me. I'm going to drive over that bridge and not even realize it. Like I'll get over it just fine. And then only after the fact will I realize I was ever on a bridge. It just completely changes the whole scenario. Like going back to how I never was allowed to play or imagine because that wasn't safe. I just haven't allowed myself to do that very well. And I've only allowed myself to imagine really heartbreaking scenarios. So all in the name of staying safe, right? But I'm kind of really shortchanging myself by leaning into that. And I think I'm keeping myself safe. But it's just such a crazy exercise to go, all right, say something bad's going to happen. What if I can just feel good in the moment? What if I just picture the best thing and then hold on to that for a minute? I tried to do it for like you know, a minute or two, just to really let it kind of sink in, because I've been tormenting myself much longer than a minute or two with the negative thought. And there's something about how your whole body just relaxes and feels looser. And I really do, I can almost feel my neural pathways just carving out and healing, and the bad ones kind of paving over and going, oh my gosh, what if this does work out? And it always, like nothing bad has ever happened because I've envisioned this, you know? So I'm like, I haven't been keeping myself safe from all this anxiety all these years. So this is my ADHD shorthand version of doing a really quick reframe. Yeah, Shelly said in the chat, she asked herself, what if it goes right? What could go right? Like, yes, that's exactly the question that I want to start asking now that I'm 50. I can spend the next 50 years asking what can go right.
Yes, and you can test and retest your body with this. Like test it beforehand, do the thought exercise, and test it afterwards. Because when you have these, the positive thought will probably loosen up something in your body. It'll feel a little better. Sometimes joy can be a threat. Like I think joy is fundamentally threatening to all of us, because otherwise we would have it a lot more than we do. And so I sometimes use I'm a big fan of Carolyn Elliott's existential kink work. And so sometimes like I'll take the thought, you know, when like, oh, my boss is going to yell at me, and like, oh, isn't it like, doesn't that taste delicious? Like I love being yelled at. Isn't that amazing? That feels so good, you know, and lean into it that way. And like, and I usually laugh because it's
That's
just
so good.
absurd.
Yeah, like I used to do this thing. You just reminded me. I used to take my fear and make it like pretend it was an Onion headline. You know, woman gets yelled at by boss, and then there was something just kind of funny about it. I don't know, takes the power away. But like joy is terrifying because it's an act of defiance. It's so defiant in the face of whatever systems are trying to control us for whatever reason. The empire. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the greatest revolution we can have is to connect with our internal authority. And as we do that, external authority will start to melt away. You know, we will not be, because all this stuff happening outside of us is happening somewhere inside of us. I think as above, so below is the only rule we ever follow. Oh, good. I'm glad you like that, Ruth. I think it is such a hilarious tool. I did once, I had a bizarro conversation with my parents taking my youngest son to college for the first time. And I did like end up with a 24-hour flu after trying to feel how good that was. So sometimes you know, but it was good. But I think that's like it needed to clear, you know, but it can be pretty powerful stuff. All right. I think there's just, we'll open it up for questions in just a second. I want everybody to go through and recheck your body to see how you're doing. Okay. And just to let you know, like, and I'll post a link to the workbook again, but this is, you can join my Substack, Stephanie's Substack, and I'm going to launch, I haven't set a date yet, but it'll be April or May at the latest, to do a more in-depth coach training course to go through the neurology and archetypes and all of the specifics of this kind of stuff in the body, to do a deep dive. It's a year-long thing that will lead ultimately to religious, there'll be a part 2 that if you wanted to become a religious trauma specialist, I just need to get all the credentialing for all of it in order, but I'm calling it heretical healing just because I think that's kind of fun. And, but really bringing together the modern and ancient scientific concepts so that we can all learn to love each other and have more connection, compassion, tolerance, and really scale. I think we have to really, I'm super interested in how we scale nervous system regulation. So I'm really giving, this year, I'm going to start giving more of it away, get my YouTube channel going for the individual techniques, but we're wired to be together. And I'm really grateful that, and I know Stephanie's really grateful that you all showed up here.
I just have to tell everyone this was mildly terrifying for me to do, but I get so excited. And part of it is that I'm so excited to see people that I feel like I'm really weird socially and I interrupt and I'm just like jittery, like a nervous chihuahua, because I'm so excited to be here. It just means so much to like these names I recognize from South Christian culture, like over the years. It just makes me so happy that you're here. And I seriously feel like healing kind of coming at me in waves. And I hope y'all can pick up on that a little bit too.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful. I am the hoarder of occult information. That's my first Vedic astrologer. That's the first thing she said to me. She's like, Melanie, do you hoard occult information? And she really didn't know me. And I just busted out laughing. It's like, yeah, I hoard all sorts of occult information, just meaning like secret, like I hoard all the secret healings. So I am unhoarding the secrets. That is my, the rest of my life, I am endeavoring to unhoard all the secrets so that things can be different for all of us. Thank you, Jane, for showing up. Thank you all. This is really heartwarming for me, the response. If anyone, I'm happy to hang out for another 15 minutes or so if people have questions or like, was that generally a good, just put in the chat, did a lot of people have a good response in your body? Was that a good experience? Awesome, good, Chase.
Oh, you guys are being so nice. Oh my God, this means so much. I just want to say I love you guys, but I don't know if that's triggering. So I have something at 1:30, so I'm going to hop off.
Okay.
So I hope that everyone who can will stay a little longer and talk with you though. And
Yeah,
is this
I'll
all
hang
still
out.
recording? Will this all be available?
It'll all be,
afterwards?
yep. I'll keep the recording going.
Okay, excellent.
The like scientifically explaining Reiki, there's tons of Reiki research. There's a lot of that follows under biofield research.
Yeah, my engineer friend, she's a mechanical engineer and she's also a Reiki master because she's like, there's no difference. It's all energy.
Yeah, one of our local hospitals, the cancer unit has a Reiki master.
That's so freaking
full
cool.
time. So like there's really good evidence on Reiki, but I think everything is nervous system to solar system alignment. When you get that full as above, so below alignment. And I think there's a lot of different ways to get it. I don't think, my way is the only way to get it, but I think that's when you get that alignment, so like when I'm treating people, they're like I'll give a couple examples. So if I'm thinking about somebody's knee and they're having a lot of knee pain and the relationship between tension and compression in the knee is distorted. And when you can restore that balance of tension and compression, but their knee it'll look like it's aligned on x-ray and everything. But when I put my hands on it, it might feel like their tibia is over here and their femur's over here. Like it's like the joint is completely dislocated, that there's so much tension that it's pulling apart. And so you take the tension out of that, and I have specific ways to do that, then they feel much better. Like I've had people with a headache where and I'm sure that like everything in a scan in their body would look fine, or pretty close to fine. Maybe they'd have some vascular changes, just because they have a headache, and headaches are often vascular. But to me, their head feels like it's stuck in their foot. And I don't really know how this works entirely, but like, so I pull their head out of their foot and put it back in their head, and their headache goes away. And so there's just different ways that we are aligned. Just because you have an arm doesn't mean that your arm is actually embodied in your arm. That we get these, or that, just because you're breathing doesn't mean that your breath is all yours. Like my mother breathing in me for a long time. And I ended up doing, we have this very odd dynamic where when something like I'm waiting, we'll see what happens after, like, this will really be the test event, because usually when I do something big like this for myself, that like I speak on stage, or like when my mother-in-law was dying and I'm going to death doula, and support my husband and kids, like my mom ends up in the emergency room. And like, it happens. It's really comical, like how many times that it's happened, and I know that there's like, for my own resist, issue, like there's been a little bit of like for all the difficulties my mother and I have had, I don't really want to kill her either. And that there's some part of me that wants, that feels like if I really put myself out there, that she's going, it's going to go sideways for her. And it's this very weird relationship. And so untangling, but like, it's been a process of like getting her to not breathe in my body. And we inherit the traumas of our ancestors. My favorite study, this has been well established in humans, but my favorite study is that it's from mice. When they train a male mouse to be afraid of the smell of cherry blossoms, its grand mice are still afraid of the smell of cherry blossoms, even though they've never seen a cherry blossom. And so we have these responses in our bodies that just are not ours, and who is showing up. And when you can regulate with the intention of like, or just ask your body the question, like, is this like parts of my great grandmother's life have played out in mine? And she had some pretty dramatic things happening. And as I was going through that, I was like, did some like time bomb go off in my system? Like I was very aware that like the bizarro nature of it all. But I had to regulate for how she was expressing through my body. And so when you can really start to layer the exercises with some intention, and understanding the mechanics, I use tensegrity as a concept. I have my technique I've called electrofascial release. But when you go in, and the tensegrity explains the architecture of all living beings, so you can really apply it in a lot of places. But anyway, I know I'm rambling. Thank you, Amanda. It is a little, I am pushing the boundaries. I am pushing the boundaries, and like I'm all interested in how we make this better, faster. My Aries self doesn't have the patience to wait for, like, I love it when the magic happens, and enough people have gotten better in 1, 2, or 3 visits with me that I really hold that as always possible. It doesn't always have, sometimes it's a little more involved, but but I always play the game of how good can it get. Yeah, we need a revolution of resilience. Oh, Ruth, good. You're an awesome. Yeah, no, I would love to train astrologers like you guys would, and people that use astrology in their coaching practice, because the energy medicine piece would be super helpful for your clients. All right, any other? I will download the chat and look through it with everybody. Thank you so much for showing. I'm happy to, like I said, I'll stay 10 more minutes. Yeah, Liz, illness, when things like, like I was not into astrology until I had a health crisis, marriage crisis, and lost tooth crisis all at the same time. I mean, I wasn't unopen to it, but it was just, like I needed something that helped make sense of my life. And for me, that was really helpful and opened up. And when I think back on it, like I read Caroline Mace's Anatomy of the Spirit very early in my career, and it really helped me understand my chronic pain patients. And so I would just very sneakily ask them, like, if they had a lower extremity problem, I would say, like, tell me about your relationship with your tribe, or like, do you have people to hang out with, or what do you do socially? So just like sneakily work some of that stuff in. But this intersection of the spirituality and science is me fully expressed. You can get the science alone from plenty of places that are out there. It's all science. That's right, Janice. There's so much more science. We are only exposed, like, I got to talk to, I'm going to blank on his name now. He's a neuroscientist that does a lot of tapping, EFT, Dawson Church a few years ago. And so in medicine, it takes on average about 17 years for what's in research to become standard practice. And still then only 20% of the research really comes into our consciousness. There's a lot and it's all gated. You have to pay for it's so expensive to have access to the journals unless you're part of an institution that gives you, that pays for the access. And he says that our doctors are working with 20-year-old cell phones at 20% capacity. So I think that's there's so much more out there, and we have to see how things connect versus compete with each other much more. I think science and astrology don't compete with each other at all. I think they match beautifully, and I think they make each other better. Yeah, Shelley, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk about that. I wrote a sleep course for the American Physical Therapy Association, so and I've taught sleep stuff. So yeah, but a lot of times the answer, like, you can do that, like, even just like when you're laying in bed at night, just breathing into the backside of your heart as you're trying to fall asleep can be really helpful. You can take some of these things and even just, apply them, or like, yes, no, like, like talk to your breath, yes, no yourself while you're going to sleep, and see if you can just have those conversations as a little bit of a ritual. You can apply these same things, or flip the, how good can my sleep get? My friend Valerie Rain wrote a book called Patriarchy Stress Disorder, and Valerie says that women are very good at playing the game of how much can we bear, and men are typically conditioned very early to play the game of how good can it get. And when we have sleep problems, it's like, oh no, like now you get worried about the sleep problem, and you get less sleep and less sleep and less sleep. And so if you can flip the script on that a little bit and be like, oh, how good can I sleep tonight? Or doesn't it feel amazing that I get no sleep? My body loves sleep. Or an existential kink, spank me with the insomnia, whatever makes it silly and disarms it. Can be, so you can take these same things that you learned today and apply them for your sleep like that, and see if they're helpful. All right. Any other questions? It's small enough now. If you want to unmute yourself, you can, or here, let me hear. This is what I'm going to do. I will stay 5 more minutes, but I'm going to stop the recording.